Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to day one of the Definity Academy Spring Virtual Sessions. Over the next few days, we'll hear from experts across our industry on a range of important topics, and we hope you find valuable, practical insights that you can apply right away in your work with clients and retirement plans. Coming up a little later at 3 o'clock, we have another session in our financial advisor track focused on client success. And tomorrow we have sessions on cash balance for both our plan sponsor and financial advisor tracks, and positioning retirement plans for what's next for plan sponsors. But right now, we are pleased to host our Recordkeeper Roundtable. The session is being recorded and will be available on demand later this week. And questions are welcome, so please enter your question into the Q&A function. We'll answer as many as time allows, and any remaining questions will be answered in a follow-up email. And with that, I am happy to hand the mic over to Brian McCabe to get us started. Brian?
All right, thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again for joining us for today's panel discussion. My name is Brian McCabe, and I am Head of Institutional Relationships here at Definity. It is my privilege to introduce our distinguished panelists whose expertise and leadership have significantly influenced collaboration between TPAs and record keepers. Following my introductions, I will invite my colleague Erica Masenko to introduce herself and then lead the discussion. I'll start with Joe Morozak. Joe serves as Vice President and National Sales Manager for the Intermediary Retirement Plan Services Division at Lincoln Financial. Joe and his team focus on the core market, 0 to 50 million retirement plan segment, and is responsible for developing and implementing strategies that increase awareness of Lincoln's portfolio of retirement plan solutions. Next, we have Kirk Smith, who is Vice President and Senior National Account Manager at Nationwide. Kirk joined Nationwide in 1996 and has held many roles within the organization. He joined the National Accounts team in 2008 and today covers 4 broker-dealer firms and 5 national TPAs. We are also joined by Abby Clark. Abby is the National Director of Strategic TPA Partnerships at John Hancock and has more than 25 years of experience in the retirement and financial services industry. She's passionate about working with TPA partners to boost growth, build strong client connections, and to make operations run smoother. Abby is based in Iowa and is an avid golfer. And finally, we are pleased to welcome Sean Miller, National Accounts Director for Empower. With over 25 years of experience in retirement services, Sean specializes in building strong partnerships with leading third-party administration firms and is responsible for driving sales growth through his key partner relationships. So Joe, Kirk, Abby, and Sean, thank you again for making yourself available for today's discussion. And Erica, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brian. I am so excited to be here to do another panel. We did one of these last fall, and it was a great success, just giving you an opportunity to hear from these leaders. I am Erica Masenko. I am the Director of Sales Support at Definity. So I do lead our internal desk. I support our sales team, and I have a little over 20 years in the industry. So I'm going to pretty much dive right in, and this is going to be a fun, interactive conversation where you get to hear our opinions, our thoughts, and just hopefully take something away from this session today where you really learned and you're able to apply. So that's why we do the whole academy, is to really bring value to you. And I'm just so thankful for the partners that are willing to join us today. So I'm going to kick it off with the question around, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in the retirement plan industry over just the last 2 years? Look at the last 12 to 24 months. And what changes do you think are actually going to stick? What do you think, Joe?
Thank you, Erica. Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. Great to be with all of you today. So, perfect question to start. Maybe some of my answers might be a little bit of a tease for some of the things that might come a little bit later on. But I would say, if I could say 3 things, one would be the move from accumulation to retirement income and retirement outcomes, right? Which I think is sorely needed, but we've talked about accumulation all of these years, and now it's how are we going to deaccumulate, create income off of what is right now, record balances and a record number of dollars that sit in these retirement plans. Two is technology, and not AI per se, but technology that leads to personalization and participant engagement. We've talked about it a lot, but I'm going to say right now it's table stakes. You have to deliver those value add services to plan sponsors and participants without question. The third, and I think we're early innings on this, is I never thought, at least, when I started in this industry, that we'd see private market funds and retirement plans, right? But that is probably the biggest discussion that my team and I are engaged in every single day. Should I or shouldn't I? I think we're about 50-50, right, on the pendulum there. So that is a trend that, started probably about 24 months ago. I think we still have some runway there. I think the last one, and I'll say a little bit of just like a surprise trend, and it's not that it's happening, but when Secure Act came out and the inclusion of pooled employer plans, or PEPs, as we all like to say, came, we thought there would be some good use for that. But I think we thought it might be smaller plans, right, that have access to that. We're just seeing, and personally, from a Link perspective, we had 40% of our sales in the first quarter go to PEPs. And it's not just small plans, it's medium-sized plans and large plans. So I think that trend, which is a little bit of a surprise, is not that PEPs are popular, but I think they're really popular and becoming more popular every day.
Yes, they were kind of slow to start off. And I remember that too. There, with the explosion of all of these small plans, it was talked about where they were going to go into these PEPs. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense for those audited plans that are spending $18,000 or more on these audits, and to be able to eliminate that, as well as get the fiduciary protection on the investments and on the 316 administration side. It really, it's a, people are calling it the easiest no-brainer. I also like the point about, the surprise in that I think the personalization has been something that way more participants want. Before, advisors used to be able to walk in the door and say, I can pick a really good target date fund. But that's not really what participants want anymore, because they are all in such different positions in life and their journey towards retirement that age isn't the only factor anymore. So those are really good points.
Thank you.
And I think, you did hit, you can't go to a webinar without hearing PEPs and AI. So we're going to have to get into that. And Abby, I think this might be a good one for you. Where is the use of technology and AI already delivering value in your organization? Do you think it's more like the sales side, implementation, operations, compliance, all the above? What do you think?
Yeah, Erica, it is exciting. And, I think as Joe just said, when we think about traditional record keeping, we haven't really talked a lot about technology and investment and change, because it's, historically speaking, it's hard to kind of turn the ship around and to make changes that are real impactful very quickly. But everywhere we look right now, we see just a record pace of opportunity for us to leverage these new platforms and these new technologies like AI, specifically to lean into personalization. And I think thinking about, the advisor's service model and how do we enable that? How do we use what we can from an AI perspective with our sales teams to deepen those relationships with the advisors, to get to know really where they're leaning in and how they're differentiating, and be able to help enable that in a real scalable way. With our participants, what I'm super excited about is that personalization that Joe mentioned. Meeting them where they're at, recording videos that can speak to a dynamic kind of room and group, and meet people when they come to you, with specific outcomes-based feedback that's tailored specifically to who we're engaging with. We're also seeing our call centers able to resolve issues right there first call, because they have access to knowledge bots in the background that just give them feedback as they're listening to the call. This is what they're asking about. Go here, enable this. So I think it's the whole spectrum of audiences. How do we leverage that to become more efficient? We're doing that right now, certainly at Manulife John Hancock, where we're seeing all kinds of exciting things quarter over quarter get introduced there with AI.
Good. Anybody else have anything? I think I like the the whole participant experience, because at the end of the day, that's why we're all here. That's why we do what we do, is for those participants. And to make that easier for them is really, I think, the focus of what we need to be constantly driving towards. Kirk, I saw you go off mute.
Yeah, I loved a couple of things that Joe brought up, and just want to maybe touch on, go maybe one step deeper. The retirement outcomes and the personalization trend, I think, is huge, and I think what I've seen over the last 24 months is this kind of the understanding of what a retirement outcome looks like, and you're seeing a lot of in-plan guarantees or annuities built inside of retirement plans, and now people are trying to pensionize their 401k plan. So I've been accumulating for the last 20, 30 years, and now I want to understand how much can I live on, or what will be my amount out every year. And so I think you see these lifetime incomes that are coming into the marketplace fast and furious. And I really think that that's probably a trend we'll see. And then the other thing, of course, is the PEPs. I was at ASPA a couple of years ago, and I remember from the main stage, someone said upwards of 50% of plans could become PEPs in the next 5 years. And this was just 2 years ago. And I thought, no way, this is crazy. And now that we're really looking at the PEP market and the benefits to a plan sponsor and to an advisor, that PEPs are a thing. It's not necessarily a financial play. I think a lot of us on the on the call today would say we're probably doing ourselves a disservice if you say this is really a financial play. I think you have to look at all the aspects: the additional fiduciary protection, the additional services you're getting, in some cases the shielding, so that if you don't like getting hit all the time from calls, those are the aspects of a PEP that I think can be real beneficial. So just a couple of points there.
Thank you for those that insight. And I'm assuming most everybody is familiar with PEPs, but yeah, it is certainly a solution where you can really leverage a larger plan. And you don't have, before they had all these requirements that you had to be in the same industry, or it was a lot harder to leverage this. And now it's easier than ever because you aren't limited by those requirements. So I think a lot of the time these companies really want to have these retirement benefits, but it takes a lot from either HR, or you even have these owners that are trying to run these plans. And they are complex. They're really complicated in some situations. And they're quite frankly scary, because if you make a mistake, you have this word fiduciary, right? So if you can isn't that what we're kind of doing all the time in the rest of our lives, is trying to leverage ways that we can have the experts do it. I could probably figure out my taxes, but I don't want to. And I think I would screw it up. I'd rather go to the experts to do it and make sure that they're looking out for me. And like these PEPs opportunities take it even a step further than having just like a TPA run the retirement plan, because of the points you made, the fiduciary protection in investments, administration, and it just really frees up that person in HR. But so we've talked about the last 24 months, the last 2 years. What about the next 2 to 3 years? There, obviously AI, you cannot have a conversation without it coming up. I took a picture of my front yard the other day and used AI to tell me what to do for landscaping. But I mean, it's every aspect of our life, including our everyday work lives, right? And how we can leverage it. It's not so much of a scary thing anymore. But how do you think it's going to reshape the retirement experience for the plan sponsors and the participants?
Erica, I can maybe take a first crack at this and take a shot at it. I think we've already said it a couple of times today, and it's a really exciting but important word: personalization. Right. And so I do think we're going to be able to leverage these solutions to really meet participants where they are at along their journey. We used to have sort of in the box kind of modules and ways that we talk to people: early savers, start now, save as much as you can, right? And then in the middle, just keep going, save more. We need to use features so that we can help you understand that you may be behind pace. And then later on, Kirk was just talking about decumulation. How do you take your savings and make that last? But now the spectrum is all over the place. And so I think we can leverage AI to really help us see people where they are and to really interact with them in real time to understand what goals they have and what objectives they're trying to navigate. And it's a pretty complex landscape, and we're seeing people kind of trying to weave everything together earlier, more often, bringing all this together. So I think what you see is just the ability to meet people where they are and to really kind of get very, very specific to how to help them drive to better outcomes for their own situation.
Yeah, I agree with Abby. I think one of the challenges, and we've all faced it, record keepers, plan sponsors, advisors, right? We're all in the same boat, is participant engagement. Inertia is the most powerful force. How do we get people to move, to do something? And Abby's right. Now with AI and Erica, to your question, I think we know where we are today, but AI is moving so fast. But I think we all believe and agree that we can get more personal. We can meet people, exactly as Abby said, where they want to be met, all in the name of getting them to engage in a meaningful way. Now, the good news is, right, we've done a lot of things over the years: auto enroll, auto increase, QDIA, set it and forget it, right? It's worked pretty well. But I think the whole personalization, outcomes, right, income stream, right, we all need to take that a little bit more serious, because we just created over the last, 30 years, the most successful vehicle ever to save money. And so, believe it or not, we take in a lot of money as an industry every year. We're actually flowing out more than we're taking in, which is pretty hard to believe, because we all see the dollar amounts that are here. We have to do a better job collectively of making sure people have, right, the income stream, the ability to live, right, a quality retirement after working so hard and saving so much, right? So I think that's where we're headed down the road.
Erica, if I could just mention one more area I wanted to make sure I didn't pin on. For our sponsors, it really is about making it easier. You mentioned the complexity to having a plan and the complexity of making sure you're doing the right thing. And I think there's some real opportunity there also, especially as you're setting up your plan. How do we make it easy to navigate those initial steps and make it efficient so that you're not spending as much energy on the front end? And how do we make it easy as you're thinking about your plan year over year to make sure you're doing the right things, you're checking the right boxes, serving up the right thoughts and the right, fiduciary oversight. So I do think the technology is evolving in a real meaningful way for the sponsors as well.
Well, then we can use it to lower fees too. I mean, once we have that built and we become more efficient, we can reduce our fees because we're able to operate at a lower cost, which then all trickles down to the participant in the end. So I do see that I don't know exactly how. I don't think anybody knows exactly how, because to Joe's point, it's moving so fast. But we do understand that there needs to be an adoption process and how that's going to work with each of our organizations to really help out those plan sponsors and then ultimately the participants. But since I can't get off the topic, I'm just going to go back to PEPs, because I think there's just a little bit more that we can touch on that. Because I think, Sean, there's a lot that is going on with your organization. I know Joe's too, so I want to hear from you as well. But Sean, if you could maybe kick this off, I know you've been having a lot of success with these PEPs as well. What are your thoughts on them and how they're able to help plan sponsors and participants?
Absolutely. I think with PEPs, there's advantages across the board, whether it's for plan sponsors or financial advisors. What we've seen at Empower is really a huge shift in not only the way how plans are offered, but I would say some of the flexibilities. I think the opportunities associated with PEPs absolutely are the ability to scale, right? You have that one PEP set up, you have depending on how the financial advisor is set up with that PEP, the ability to just kind of ton it and do several plans. Efficiencies, absolutely. I think efficiencies for the plan sponsors, for the plan participants as well, are automatically built in there. And I think one of the biggest benefits for PEPs is the reduced fiduciary liabilities for those plan sponsors. Now, I know we already hit on the cost savings for audited plans. But I think that's huge. I mean, when you consider the fact that I know we talked about the dollar amounts, 10,000, 15, 20,000 for an audited plan, because that's spread out amongst the entire PEP plan sponsors, the cost for that audit is a small fraction of what it would normally be. Erica, the other thing that we've seen at Empower is really the way that PEPs are being offered. And what I'm really talking about here, there's a number of different flexible options for financial advisors and plan sponsors that want to be a part of a PEP. What we've seen, and probably this was the original way PEPs were offered, which is kind of a build your own. There was a set PPP, there was a set 316 TPA, and there was many times a set consultant or an advisory group that was part of that PEP. The second iteration, if you will, was more of an open PEP where you still had that same PPP, 316 TPA, but those PEPs are open to multiple financial advisors. And that's usually investment decision, whether it's the 338 or whether it's the core lineup that's in the offering. What we've seen more recently is also new flexibilities around PEPs, and this is for multiple TPAs to be part of. So I put this in two camps. The first camp I put this in is for those TPAs that are out there that don't want to or can't be a PPP or a 316. But more recently, what we've seen is many times those TPAs that are full-blown PPPs, 316s, still adopting into these multi-TPA style PEPs. And it usually comes back to the investment decision is the reason they're adopting into it. The growth at Empower really has been explosive. So if you look back about 5 years in 2021, we probably had about 25 million in PEP assets. We anticipate by the end of this year, that number is going to be in the area of about 6 billion. So we went from 4 adopter sales to about 530 adopter sales last year. This year, we anticipate to do about 3 billion in PEP sales. So again, it's growing tremendously. And, that $3 million in sales that we'll do this year, that will make up a full 25% of Empower's core sales. So absolutely growing considerably.
Eric, I'll jump in. Sean did a great job. So a little bit to add, and I completely agree that sales are growing exponentially, right? Like we're going up every year in a meaningful way. I think Kurt used the 50% number. I think we're seeing it, right? Because we're getting closer to that number every quarter of our sales. And it's not, I'll go back to, it's not about a product. It's really about a solution. And we'll lay out in every instance a single employer plan on one side and a PEP on the other. And we really, right, like we just want to educate sponsors, advisors to make the right decision for their base. But there's a whole lot of reasons, right? And we're on the PEP topic to do a PEP, right? 316, 338, as Sean said, the hard audit cost. I mean, maybe as important as we all know when auditors run around an office for a week or two, 15,000 looks like a bag of cherries, right? Because they're taking out 3 or 4 of your top people for, a week or two and they're offline and like everybody's running around like crazy. And what is everybody trying to do? Everybody's trying to run a business. So there's a lot of reasons for a PEP. There's a lot of reasons for single employer plans. I just tell everybody to get educated, match them, look at them side by side, and decide what the best fit. But obviously, the PEP being new, it's catching a lot of people's eyes, and it is growing exponentially across the retirement space right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because there's a lot of mixed feelings about it when they first became available, and that you might be restricted on plan design, but we're finding that's not really the case. You still have quite a bit of flexibility by company that goes into the PEP. Now, I think we've, because we are all such industry vets, right? We've been tossing around a couple of phrases, and I want to make sure that everybody who's on this call, that we're not just going right over your head and this isn't making any sense. So when it comes to these PEPs, we've talked about 316 and then 338. and that it's fiduciary protection. But I saw recently in an article that was published where there was a survey that went out that asked a lot of plan sponsors, what do you think about 316 services? And a lot of them responded with, oh, we've already got a financial, that's a 321 or a 338. We've already got the advisor taking care of that. So many of them didn't understand that 316 isn't about the investments like the 321 and 338. And these are just codes that go along with, the laws, right? But when we say 316, it's what these plan sponsors are responsible for doing every day when it comes to that 401k. What they're spending all their time on, making sure that everybody's automatically enrolled when they're supposed to be, that these contributions are hitting when they're supposed to be, that everybody's got the correct vesting percentage as it's on, if they look on the Empower website or the Nationwide website, it's correct. That plan sponsor is the one who has this fiduciary liability for the administration of the plan. Now that's 316. So with these PEPs, you've got that 316 protection, which is the administrative side, which, Joe and HR is doing, or it has the investment protection. So it's really a great solution if you feel that that's something you could benefit from. So I just wanted to be clear on what we were talking about when we're referring to 316, because, yes, PEPs, super hot topic, but, so is 316. PEPs aren't for everyone, but what if you want to still have a plan where you don't really want to do all the administration work, but you want your advisor to be very involved in picking up the lineup. So you don't want to do a PEP because it might have a 338, which might limit their ability. So what about just using the single 316 side of things? Now, that is something Definity does very well. We have a lot of 316 clients, but I can tell you all day long why I think it's fantastic, but I really want these experts here on the panel to help explain that and just give your opinion. Sean, what do you think about 316 services?
Yeah, so I would say this, for 316 services, I'm a huge fan. I deal with a number of TPAs and plan sponsor clients and financial advisors. 316 services really address some of the main pain points that plan sponsors see. In other words, the plan sponsor, the financial advisor gets a true retirement plan expert in their corner. When I think of pain points, I think of things like administration. Erica, you had said it before, retirement plans can be complex. 316s really take out the complexity for that plan sponsor and really take the knowledge, the expert piece out of the equation. I think the other huge part of it is just the risk, though. When you're offering a retirement plan, plan sponsors are doing the right thing, but there are still risks associated with it. So it greatly reduces the risk. Everything I would say from distributions associated with the plan design, even when it comes to the investment. So 316 services, I think, are absolutely needed and a great value. The only thing I would throw out there is, as kind of the consideration, I guess, if you will, there are still some of the fiduciary liabilities the plan sponsor has. And what I mean by that is they still have to prudently select the 316 and monitor the 316. Aside from that, though, most of the things you hear in the news, the fiduciary lawsuits out there, 316s go a long way into helping shield, I guess, that plan sponsor.
Yeah, it doesn't 100% take it away, but gosh, it's nice to not have to worry about signing a Form 5500 and filing it. I'd
Sure.
way rather have my TPA do that for me, but at least you have a great point there. You can't ever completely eliminate your fiduciary liability, but you can drastically reduce it by partnering with 316 and 338 providers.
Absolutely.
Sean makes a great point. And what I would say is all 316s aren't created equal, right? And Definity does a really, really excellent job of outlining what is and is not included in your 316 services. So cautionary tale there, make sure you're having a pretty in-depth conversation with your 316 provider. There is great fiduciary, we've used the F word a few times now, right? But fiduciary. You make sure you understand where your fiduciary roles are being relieved or slightly relieved? And also, what are your roles to make sure, as Sean pointed out, that you are still doing what is required as a fiduciary to oversee that 316?
Great point. You never want to end up at the end of the year when, you're finger pointing. I thought you were doing it. No, I thought you were doing it. So yes, if you choose a 316 provider, make sure that they do a summary of services so you know exactly what you're still responsible for. It's going to be minimal, like making sure the census data gets over so that, we know tracking and that type of thing. But it is something where it needs to be understood right in the beginning. So we're very clear. These are great points. This is why we invited you guys on, right? This is excellent. So thank you. And, one of the things that we haven't really, I know we've covered a lot, but one of the things we haven't really talked about is the biggest risks that we see in the retirement plan space and what we can do to help these plan sponsors and the participants mitigate these risks. What do you think they're going to be? Kirk, I think,
Yeah, I'll jump.
This once? Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to jump on this real quick. But Abby, did you have something you wanted to say before I jump in?
Go ahead, Kirk. I'll back clean up later. No problem.
Okay. Yeah, after me, there's a lot of cleanup, so I appreciate it. It's Erica. Thank you for the question. So I'm going to throw out some industry terms, and this will sound like name dropping, and it certainly isn't. But last month, a lot of us on this panel were down in Tampa at NAPA. NAPA is the National Association of Plan Administrators. They do their annual conference right after tax day, and this year it was in Tampa. And the CEO of NAPA, he's also an attorney, his name is Brian Graff. And I was having a conversation with Brian, and we were talking about what is that's kind of on the horizon. And he said litigation has become abusive and excessive in this industry, and it'll have a chilling effect on plan innovation. And I thought that was very, very insightful, right? Litigation has become abusive and excessive, and it will have a chilling effect on innovation in our industry. And I think that is a really good point. I also think that's the bad news, right? I think he used the term modern day ambulance chasers, right? He was not painting his brethren in the law field as in any kind of nice colors. But that's the bad news. Here's the good news. This year, under this current administration, the burden of proof is going to flip. So for all of us on the call, whether you're a plan sponsor, a record keeper, a financial advisor, the burden of proof is going to flip. If there is a class action lawsuit that takes place today, as it stands right now, the plan sponsor, the record keeper, whichever fiduciary is in the boat with that group, they have to prove that they've done everything right to get out of that class action lawsuit. By the end of this year, Graff says that burden of proof is going to flip so that the plaintiffs, so that class action attorney, they are going to have to prove their case instead of all of us trying to defend our roles in this. So I think that's huge. And to me, I think that's probably something that everyone needs to be aware of on this call, kind of where you sit, because right now, a lot of these class action lawsuits are happening at the largest plans, right? We all know their names, right? John Deere and Walmart and companies like that. But there is just, if you look, there's actually more lawsuits in those plans that are under $100 million than in the mega plans, but the mega plans just get all the attention, obviously, because they're household name brands. So right. To me, I think that's probably the biggest thing, Erica.
Yeah, Eric, I'll throw one thing out there too is, cybersecurity. I think that's going to be, it is, and it will be a bigger problem going forward. It's, it's funny. I see some of the RFPs that come through the Empower area. And, I think 5 years ago, there'd be some RFPs, and that's a request for proposals. I should explain that. But there would be some questions around cybersecurity. The RFPs we get right now, there are 5 to 10 questions around Empower's cybersecurity protocols. I think the other thing that will also affect that will be, we've talked a lot about the great uses for AI, and there are significant ones. Cybersecurity, good and bad. The bad, of course, because you're going to have the hackers out there using AI to do what they do, and you're going to, the record keepers are going to have quality procedures and leverage AI to keep them out. The good thing is everybody on this call, big record keepers, great cybersecurity protocols and practices. But I do think AI is going to be a bigger problem going forward.
Right. It's this technology. We've been talking about how great it is. Yeah, it's great for us, but it's also great for these criminals. It's making that so much easier for them to get our data. And that's what it's all the most sensitive data that we have. The addresses, the social security numbers, dates of birth. Yeah, it's scary, but having that good cybersecurity, and that's hard for some of these TPAs. So yeah, we are very fortunate enough to have a chief technology officer and have the resources to really protect that participants' data. But I think that is something, to your point, these requests for proposals, no one's going to hire you anymore unless they're sure that the data is going to be absolutely protected.
Yeah. And, the record keepers on this call with us right now, large, professional, huge capabilities around cybersecurity. Those are the ones I think you're going to want to stick with. I do know there are literally millions of attempted attacks on a daily basis across the industry. So,
yeah, no doubt. If I could just add, I think Kirk and Sean hit really two big ones: litigation and cyber. The one that I kind of worry about, though, is, and we've talked about it the last 30 minutes, is we are building these great plans that have flexibility, solution oriented. How do we make sure that not some, but all participants are maximizing these retirement plans, right? Because I think at the end of the day, that's the key. And it worries me when people get to 65 and they have 100,000 saved, but they need 500. How do we make sure that we get them to that point where they can have a fulfilling, right, quality retirement? So agree with both of those. And I think part of this could play into the litigation story, but we need to make sure that participants are maximizing retirement programs that all of us collectively care so much about and are building every day, right? And that's where the personalization, the engagement, right? The use of technology for good, not evil, right? Because it's going to be used on both sides of the equation, really helps us get people where they need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that actually, I've been looking at the Q&A, and there was a question around the personalization. And what does that mean? Does that mean just being one-on-one with the advisor? And it can mean that you have an advisor that's going to work with the participants one-on-one to look at all of the data and the factors that go into the retirement. It also goes back to, I think, what we were talking about, where it has more to do with the technology and the tools that we have, where, like, I remember the calculators that we used to have for retirement, right? You would just be able to put in your age and, the amount that you want when you retire, and boom. Like, now these calculators, it's going to take you, a lot longer because you put in a lot more data, but they're so more accurate because it's really factoring in if you're male or female, your compensation, your deferral rate, if you want to include Social Security or not, just all these things that are going to impact your retirement balance in the end. So the personalization can be the investment side of it. It can be just really looking at all the different data points that are going to make up your retirement in the end. But yeah, I love that it's getting to be that we're not just putting everybody in the same bucket and say that, all right, if you're age 45, you need to be in this fund. We're considering so much more.
Yeah, Erica, I think to echo exactly what you just said, I think, a lot of times we've thought about how do we engage with participants reactively. We need to figure out a way to, find them in these moments. But now with these technologies, we can actually find them proactively. So I think all of us on this call live out of suitcases more often than we like to admit. And, one of the things that surprised me, 6 months ago, I open up my iPad getting ready to go on a trip to download, whatever movie I was going to watch on the airplane. And I figure out that the streaming service has already downloaded shows for me to watch based on what the content that I've already watched, so I don't even have to do anything except go, yeah, that one's not quite right. But now this is the one that I'm going to pick. And the next time it's that much smarter. And I think that if we think about personalization with participants and what you were just saying, compare me to my peers. How much do I have saved? How old am I? All of these things. But now as we start to see, this is where they're navigating. These are the things they're clicking on. They're things they're trying to understand about their plan. This is how they're invested. This is the amount of detail they've given us, and we can actually proactively meet them where they are and start to make some, really informed, guidance that we can provide to them. And I think that's just super exciting and pretty cool to see us how quickly we'll be able to navigate that when we think about it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of the participants don't even realize that these are now available to them. So I know this, there's a lot of financial advisors on the call. So just maybe you might want to ask yourself if you are even aware to share with your participants what resources and capabilities the record keepers might have. And, lean on your TPAs for that too, because I'm pretty familiar with all of your products and what you can do. And I encourage my sales team to, I try and highlight a different record keeping partner from time to time, and we just continually educate them on what you have, because it is some truly amazing things that can benefit these participants. All right. So that's pretty much all the questions I had today, and I've been answering some as they've come through on the Q&A, but any last remarks anyone have coming into this?
Eric, I'd throw one more thing out. I think the tools for financial professionals are just going to get so much better, and there's going to be so much more information available to them. We talked about AI today a little bit on the pro, the con, all that. But I think data is going to be huge. The amount of data that financial professionals are going to be able to leverage from their partners is going to just increase dramatically over the next several years.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm currently at another conference, and I spent my morning talking about API integrations, and it's because it's the data and what we can do and how we can get to the spot, which is personalization, because we have that data. So if we've got plan sponsors on the line, look into if your payroll provider can integrate with Nationwide or Manulife, John Hancock, or Lincoln, or Empower. It changes your life when you're able to do this integration, and then you trust that the data is more accurate, it's more timely. So these are conversations we're all willing to have. And, I am, again, so thankful for your insights today. You're truly respected in the industry, so I could not be more happy to have you take some time to educate us all, and we appreciate everything you've had to say, and I look forward to seeing you again soon, as I do.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you
Brian
very much.
there. Yeah.
Just real quick, I just want to thank you all again for joining us, and for everyone who's attending the Academy today. The next session will start at 3 p.m. Eastern sharp. I just wanted to make that announcement. So Joe, Sean, Abby, Kirk, Erica, thank you so much, and hope to see you real soon.
Thank you.
Bye, friends.